Senpai! Senpai! Senpai, love me! I cannot! You're too beautiful! I am hideous! Senpai, love me! Senpai! Senpai, love me! No! I am but one man! You are too much woman for me! Senpai! Senpai, love us! Dios mío! Senpai, love us! No! If you did not understand that opening sequence, you have not watched enough Perspective End. So Kingdom Waspinator is one of the last few figures I picked up before my financial troubles. I still have a few things on pre-order that I already paid off waiting for release, one thing that's just been kind of stuck in shipping for my entire goddamn life, and a smattering of the new wave along with this guy, and one thing that I bought after my monetary woes because I promised I'd review it long ago. But for now, there won't be much new arriving to my channel. I do have a solid backlog of figures you've all never seen before, but that is finite and I will run out eventually. If you want to help me so I can afford to get new figures to review when they finally come out, like 86 Perceptor or really anything from the Legacy line, then please, check out my Patreon. Still working towards that goal of being able to afford groceries. Please, if you are not financially secure with completely disposable income, don't give me anything. And don't feel bad about it. I don't ever want to make anything harder for you guys. Causing you trouble runs completely counter to everything I love doing here. If you can, and do feel like tossing a coin or two my way, any amount gets you votes on things like future reviews, and maybe some other stuff too. We'll see. Along with a place in the credits. Sorry for wasting your time, now to talk about Kingdom Waspinator. So am I the only one kind of disappointed that he's not a weaponizer? Wepsinator? I mean, I know he shouldn't be. He should be a figure that transforms naturally, but I can't help but feel like this should have been able to be disassembled to a point like the 86 Cup. Since, I mean, it's Waspinator. I swear this guy is more famous for being a pile of parts than a complete dude. They didn't even have the decency to put this guy on a sequence of ball joints. It's all pinned here, so no matter what, you can't disassemble him. The savages. You know, upon initially getting this thing, I really didn't like it. It felt floppy, flimsy, and fairly small considering Waspinator is supposed to be one of the tallest Predacons in the whole show. Certainly not what you would call one of the Predacon beefcakes, but for sure taller than the Cheetor at least, and this is very much not that. And to an extent, all of what I just said is true, but this grew on me pretty quickly despite its issues. One of which being the fact that it's been 25 years at this point, and they still haven't figured out how to deal with Waspinator's bug legs. These are still just jutting off of him in all the most unhelpful ways I can imagine. But in all other ways, this is easily the most accurate Waspinator ever made. His greens are the right tone, his proportions are on point, he's got all the paint he needs, picking out all the little accent points inherent on the design, his surfaces aren't as smooth and swooped as they are supposed to be, his wings are the wrong color, and he's intended to have 4 of them, not 2. The color matchup of the yellow paint is way off. I mean, these aren't even close. The plastic is way too cold and desaturated, and there are clearly a lot of design decisions based on the Generations Waspinator that are not part of the show design. Like these feet are a flat copy of the Thrilling 30 Waspinators, along with the groin hinge section, head transforms the same. Honestly, I struggle not to just call this a downscaled retool of the Thrilling 30. It's not, but like, just barely. Like, super barely. I'm someone who's comfortable calling the Cliff Jump ER a retool, and yet I struggled to call this one when they pretty much just took the legs, torso, and head straight off the T30 figure and then slapped some new arms on here. But the change to the transformation and to the alt mode is significant. It's not just the same thing, with the only difference being, what if we did the exact same thing again, but backwards? But if you want to call this a retool, I'm not even going to try to fight you on it. Most of this figure is exactly the same. Improved in a lot of ways, it definitely looks more accurate and better except for the fat bug legs. And the chest is much lower, meaning you can look directly head on at this guy and not only be capable of seeing the top of his head. Basically, it feels like they took a hard look at the Generations figure and said, how can we do this, but better? Unlike the ER Cliff Jumper, which was, how can we do this again, but without being accused of being lazy? I know, we'll add parts forming. It's foolproof. No one will ever call us lazy if it parts forms now. I will say that one of the biggest improvements this thing has over the older figure is the ability to freely pose the wings however you want. Another solid improvement here is the head, which while the sculpt of the old one wasn't that much different, this is leagues better painted. Really capturing the character, if perhaps making him look a little too mean. Not that he looked like a nice guy before, it's just that, do you buy this as the face of the dude who gets wrecked in every fight? Fun fact, years ago, I read an incorrect, now deleted Wikipedia article on Waspinator that cited him as being immortal, due to the fact that he was taken over by Starscream's ghost at one time, which is why he always survived such incredible punishment when other characters died from less. I just believed that as true for probably a decade, and now that I know that it's not, I'm kind of angry that it isn't. Seriously, it makes so much sense that he can't die rather than he just doesn't, and it's yet another thing that kind of completely screws him over. Whatever. He has light piping, gross, but the color of the purple eyes is solid enough and saturated enough that it still looks good from the front, and the light piping while in effect actually looks really cool, which might be a first for light piping. Ever. So the only compromise from that is the fact that it makes the back of his head look bad, which is an issue diminished by the fact that the back of his head is largely covered by his hump. Only problem is that really interferes with the light piping. So the one time it actually looks good, it's hard to use because there's something fucking blocking it. See, this is why I hate this crap. It's always an ode to compromise and failure. The accessories this guy comes with are kinda bad. It's rare for me to say that about accessories, but this guy is tiny and only comes with one accessory. It's a stinger gun, and it's wrong. This isn't even remotely what this is supposed to look like. And honestly, what it does look like is a whole lot of nothing. This looks like a bee's butt and not much else. It's kind of vaguely technologic looking, but it's kind of astonishing just how little the shit they gave about this thing. Like, this dude is significantly shorter than the Cheetor figure. A huge amount of his engineering is reused from a 6-year-old mold, and they didn't even bother giving him the gun off the old mold because it would cost even 1 cent more to make. Or maybe the designer was just really neurotic and they didn't want to give him a weapon with a stinger on it because only female wasps have stingers. Poseability on this guy isn't all that impressive. I mean, it's fairly average, but while I would say that the Generations figure was overall worse than this, it was better in some key places this doesn't have an excuse to not be as good as. Head with some great, well beyond average side to side, but basically no up or down, though this is the one part of this thing that is on a ball joint, so at least you can decapitate him. Like 89-degree shoulders, normal 90 elbows that were better on the Generations figure, quite possibly the smallest hands that are still on wrist swivels of all time. One of this figure's biggest alterations is actually having a waist swivel, legs kick forward great, out to the side is really hampered by the bug legs, and it basically can't kick back at all. Normal 90 knees, which is a far sight better than the Generations figure who couldn't get half that far in the proper direction for some reason. Mafia knees. And good feet with inwards tilt, toe down, and heel down. So yeah, this is pretty dead average on the posing front. Transformation feels kind of like it was designed by the absolute novice that made the Kingdom tracks while cribbing off someone else's work. This can actually hold together unlike that other figure, but the tabs on this guy are all once again tiny. Like this designer is allergic to large tabs, so it all feels really loose. I don't know if it's the same guy, I'm just saying it feels like it's the same guy who did the tracks. And the Wasp mode is pretty good. Probably one of the more accurate alt modes of all the Beast Wars figures to the show character it's based on. I suppose that's just because the original show model was actually a pretty accurate depiction of what a wasp really looks like, only messing up on the head and the stance. This does look pretty cool, but with the arms folded under it the way that it is, it makes it look like a bee with a motorcycle engine in its chest to me. Metal. This mode is mostly a brick. The bug legs rotate, but they can't be used for any walking or emoting poses, and they are weirdly hard to have all 6 legs touching the ground at once, and impossible to have all 6 feet flat as well. The wings still pose, so that's at least something. For some reason, his antenna can rotate, which isn't very useful in any mode. Like this, and maybe you can make it look like he's lightly dive-bombing something, but honestly, I wish they just left this feature out, as it's kind of just in the way. Probably most useful is the fact that the bug head can articulate up and down, and his weird, I don't know, bug beak mouth can open and close, giving him probably the most important joints he could get to emote like this. Ultimately, it does look a lot more like a real wasp than the Generations one, but that one's got the more useful, less poopy-looking legs. All in all, this is an acceptable Waspinator. It's not bad, but this could have been a lot better. Hell, forget could. Should is the correct term. It should have been bigger. There is no reason for this to be so short in the face of every other figure in the line when he's supposed to be one of the taller characters. The tabs and ports should have been bigger as well, so it could hold together more positively. The elbows should have had more bend, as there really isn't anything stopping them from doing so other than they just designed it not to. The gun should have been more accurate, and it shouldn't have been so loose and floppy. I'm not even mad that this is mostly just a retool of the Generations figure. That is what a lot of people wanted, and it's not even what I'm pissed at the Cliffjumper about. It's okay that it's a retool of the MP 1.0 Bumblebee. Huh. Its problem is that it sucks. This does not have that problem. It's a step forward in some ways, and a step back in others. Overall, it's probably better than the Generations figure. While it really could have stood to be better, as a representation of Waspinator, it's a reasonably good one. One that if you want to get the Transformers' resident Wooby in your life, then I think you will be happy to do so. It does pull that off aptly. But if you don't want this sad, pathetic boy, I'm not going to tell you that this is one you need to hunt down no matter how you feel about him, like I will with some other figures. I like this thing more than I feared I would when I initially got it, but it's not exactly a barn burner of a figure. If it didn't feel so poorly tabbed together, I might just give this a less lukewarm rating than I am. Ultimately, get this if you really want a Waspinator. But if you want to save your money, I don't think you will hate yourself for that decision. And that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know you know what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.